Daniel Sports Central will be giving you guys my second edition of college football rankings for this 2022 off-season. This is going to be an updated version of our way too early college football rankings that we did back in January. And the spring has passed by, and we've seen multiple significant changes for many teams going into next season. So that said, this is going to be an updated version of our rankings here today. Let's go ahead and get started with 1 through 5. Number 1 is going to be Alabama, and they were number 1 in our way too early rankings that we did a few months back as well. Alabama to me is just to say it straightforward, the favorite for me to win the national championship next season. I mean, all the signs point to them. I mean, you got Bryce Young coming back. Many of the key players on both sides of the ball are coming back. Plus, I mean, the amount of depth and the recruiting for Alabama. I mean, that Crimson Tide, they're the dynasty of college football right now, and I see no sign of them stopping anytime soon. So the Crimson Tide are my number 1. Ohio State and Georgia did swap positions. I had Georgia, I believe, at number 2 in my way too early rankings, and Ohio State at number 3. But Ohio State, the Buckeyes really, they look good going into next season. Very good. They got C.J. Stroud coming back. Obviously a huge return there. And I mean, yeah, last season he was outstanding, and he's only going to get better going to next season. Jackson Smith-Njigba as well. And I mean, that's just a couple of players. I mean, Ohio State looks really good going to next season. They're my favorite to win the Big Ten right now, with Michigan not far behind. But Georgia's number 3. The Bulldogs, they are losing a few players for sure. They're defending national champions. But Georgia, the depth looks great. And I mean, the Bulldogs, I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see them in the college football playoff once again next season. Michigan is my number 4. Now, the Wolverines, this team, Michigan's a team that certainly I feel like has got some major potential. I mean, and something that you'll tend to notice out of a lot of surprise teams. I mean, Michigan you could consider to be a slight surprise team last season, considering in 2020 they were pretty bad in 2020. In 2021 they finally won the Big Ten and made it to the college football playoff. But I mean, Michigan, they look pretty good going to next season. I mean, and considering how well they did last season, I mean, the returning production is really good. McNamara's coming back. You got the receivers. The receiving position looks excellent. You got your top 4 receivers coming back from last season. So Michigan, that is a team to keep an eye on going into 2022. And Utah is as well. The Utah Utes, that's a team that I feel like is a potential national dark horse going into next season. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see Utah in the college football playoff in this 2022 season. They got Cam Rising coming back, who was excellent last season. And, I mean, the Utes overall, they won the Pac-12 last season, and they're returning many of the key players from last season. So Utah, keep an eye on them, because, I mean, if everything goes as it should, Utah is definitely going to be a national contender next season. Moving on to 6 through 10, we got Oklahoma State at number 6. The Cowboys are also a team to really keep an eye on. I feel like Spencer Sanders coming back. He was a bit inconsistent last season, but I mean, if he can improve in Oklahoma State, considering how much they're returning going into next season, I mean, the Cowboys are definitely a team to keep an eye on. They're currently my favorite to win the Big 12, but Oklahoma's not far behind. I feel like the Big 4 in the Big 12 are going to be Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Texas, and then Baylor. All 4 of those teams are very capable of winning the conference this upcoming season, but Oklahoma State I do have at the highest position right now. Texas A&M is my number 7. The Aggies going into next season, they got the top recruiting class in the country. 8 5-stars going into the Aggies, going into Texas A&M for the 2022 season. So Texas A&M, that is a team to keep an eye on. They should be, I would say, a national contender next season. But once again, I mean, that SEC West division is just brutal, because you got Alabama obviously winning that division all the time, and Texas A&M, they're going to have to play lights out. You got to beat Alabama, and I mean, if they can win that division, that's the first step in the process of winning a national title. And Texas A&M, I feel like, is a team that in the future, especially in the next couple of years, they're very capable of doing so. Notre Dame's number 8, and the Fighting Irish, they're losing a lot of their key players from last season, but the depth is pretty good for the Irish going into next season. And I mean, Notre Dame, they're so consistent. That's a team that I feel like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, I mean, if they weren't quite as good in the 2022 season, maybe more of a rebuilding season. But going into the season, I do want to rank Notre Dame in the top 10. Oklahoma's number 9, and the Sooners are also a wild card team, kind of a tough team to predict because of the amount of changes that they have going to next season. Of course, the controversy with Lincoln Riley taking off to USC. You got Brent Venables as the new head coach, which I feel like he's an excellent man for the job. And I mean, of course, a whole new quarterback situation. Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler both have transferred out. Dylan Gabriel coming in, UCF quarterback, and the quarterback situation overall is kind of complicated for Oklahoma. But I mean, it's considering the Sooners literally had two of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I felt going into the 2021 season with Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler, both of them now being gone. The Sooners are a team with a couple of question marks, but I do think OU is going to be once again a Big 12 contender. I mean, they win the conference 11-1 or 12-0. There's a good chance they'll be in the college football playoff, so I do expect them to be a contender. Clemson's number 10. They're my first ACC team in these rankings, and it comes at number 10. I mean, Clemson, honestly, I'm not too confident in many of the ACC teams going to next season. Clemson, of course, DJ Uiagalelei is coming back. They got a lot of their key players from last season coming back. And also Clemson, that was a team that, I mean, they improved a lot over the course of the 2021 season. They looked kind of sloppy in September, but eventually really, I mean, they looked very good towards the end of last season. So Clemson is a team that I feel like definitely is going to be a top 10 team. I could see them being a contender once again next season, but for now I'm going to be kind of conservative with them, keeping them at number 10, but do keep an eye on them. They could very much be a national contender. Moving on to 11 through 15, we got USC at number 11. USC is a team that I feel like, I mean, I understand, and some of you guys may say, oh, he's just fallen to the hype of Lincoln Riley and everything, but I genuinely feel like USC is going to be a team that is going to be a big-time contender in the Pac-12. You got, I mean, it's not just Caleb Williams. You got Travis Dye coming in, Oregon transfer running back, who put up outstanding yardage last season. I think over 1,500 yards and nearly 20 touchdowns. Travis Dye is going to be a playmaker in this offense. I mean, USC, I mean, their offense is going to be a lot better going into next season. Defensively, they're returning some key players. So I feel like USC is a team to keep an eye on as well. I don't know if they're going to be a national contender, but definitely I can see them being a Pac-12 contender. Oregon's number 12, just behind them. The Ducks, of course, Bo Nix going in. That's going to be quite a change. I mean, but for Oregon, that's a team that I feel like, I mean, they'll be a Pac-12 contender as well. I mean, I feel like Utah's my favorite right now to win the Pac-12, but USC and Oregon are not too far behind. Number 13 is going to be Texas. That's a team that some are saying is a bit overrated going into next season, and obviously, I mean, Texas being 5-7 last year, there's reason to see why that is, and sometimes they're hyped up in the offseason and they end up underperforming. But going to next season, Quinn Ewers going in. I mean, he's an excellent quarterback, and that's going to be huge. And I feel like Texas, I'm not going to rank them in the top 10, but they certainly should be a pretty good team next season. I wouldn't be surprised to see Texas ranked for a good chunk of the season, but I don't know if they'll be quite a national contender. NC State's number 14. That's a team that is definitely a dark horse. I feel like they could definitely surprise some people this upcoming season. NC State and Clemson, I feel like, are your two top teams in the ACC. Wake Forest not far behind. NC State, though, they got Devin Leary coming back. They're looking pretty good. I mean, NC State is a team that I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see them win the ACC this upcoming season. Michigan State's number 15, and the Spartans are very capable once again being a Big Ten contender. Of course, Kenneth Walker taking off is that's a tough loss. That's going to be a hole to replace, but I mean, otherwise, looks pretty good on the return production and for Michigan State. So I do want to put them in the top 15. Moving on to 16 through 20, Kentucky's number 16. That's a team that, I mean, we saw a lot of teams be surprise teams in the 2021 season. Kentucky, you could consider to be potentially one of them. The Wildcats, though, going into 2022, lose a few key players, but otherwise, I think Kentucky should be one of the top teams in the SEC. I could see them in the 9 to 10 win range this upcoming season. Baylor's number 17. I had them much higher in my way too early rankings back in January. I just feel like Baylor, I mean, that's a team that, I mean, all signs point to them being once again a contender in the 2022 season. But I mean, they got Gary Bohannon coming back, which is huge. The running back situation, they lose a couple of key players in the backfield, which is a concern. And defensively, they lose some key players as well. So I feel like Baylor falls off just a bit. They're still going to be a good team. They should be top 20, I do think. But the Bears, I do want to, I'm probably going to put them fourth in the Big 12. I mean, I could definitely see them with 8 or 9 wins, but I don't know if they'll be quite as good in the 2022 season. They got some decent depth, but I just feel like I mean, Bohannon's coming back as well, and we'll see how that fares out. But I mean, they're losing some key starters, which will be a concern there. BYU's number 18. They surprised last season as well. BYU's got, I mean, Jaren Hall coming back. They're looking pretty good. The Cougars, I could see them being definitely top 20, and I'm going to put them at number 18 in my post-spring rankings. Auburn's number 19. The Tigers, obviously a very interesting team going into this upcoming season. I mean, they could be both really good or really bad, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, Auburn's a team that, I mean, Zach Calzada coming in from Texas A&M, that's certainly, I mean, he's a player that's got a high ceiling, but he wasn't incredibly good in the 2021 season. So we'll see how he does. But Auburn definitely, I feel like, is a team that they got a high ceiling, but at the same time, I just don't know if they'll get up to that potential. But I'll see them. I think 8 to 9 wins is a pretty reasonable range for Auburn next season. Wake Forest is number 20. That's a team that I feel like, I mean, considering how well they did last season, they're returning a lot of their key players as well. And so Wake Forest, I got them at number 20. But yeah, that's a team that, I mean, they could very well win the conference as well. But I feel like NC State and Clemson, I'm a bit more confident with them. Moving on to 21 through 25, we got Arkansas number 21. I mean, Arkansas and Kentucky are pretty much in the same boat. If you're asking me about the SEC, both teams were surprises last season, and both teams are losing a few key players. But Kentucky, I'm more confident with them than I'm with Arkansas. But the Razorbacks definitely a team to keep an eye on still. Wisconsin's number 22. I mean, that offense last season was not very good, but their defense was outstanding. So I mean, and if their offense can improve going into next season, defensively they're returning some of their key players. I mean, Wisconsin could potentially be a good team next season, but I feel like the Big Ten West, I mean, the Big Ten West might just have 5 teams that get 8 to 9 wins next season. I'm not even kidding you. I mean, the Big Ten West doesn't have like a huge standout team going to next season, but there are multiple teams that could be good next season. I mean, I could honestly see the Big Ten West champion being a 9-3 Wisconsin team. So it's definitely a very competitive division going to next season. But I got Wisconsin at 22, South Carolina's at 23. Of course, Spencer Rattler is the main storyline for them. They also got Austin Stogner going in, tight end. I mean, so South Carolina is a very interesting team going to next season. I could see them 7 to 9 wins next season. So I'll put them in 23. Iowa's number 24, and honestly, at 24, I could put both Iowa or Purdue. Purdue could easily crack this list as well, but I'm going to put Iowa at number 24 just because I'm a bit more confident in them than I am with Purdue right now. But I mean, Iowa's offense, they're kind of in a similar situation to Wisconsin last season. Offensively, they just were not very good, but their defense was, I mean, one of the best in the nation. So we'll see how Iowa does going to next season, but I'm more confident that Wisconsin's going to be a better team than Iowa next year. And then Cincinnati's number 25, college football playoff team from last season, but they're losing a lot of key players from the 2021 season. So I don't expect the Bearcats to be quite as good in the 2022 season. They're kind of going into a rebuilding phase, but in a couple of years, I mean, who knows? They could be right back in the college football playoff. But that said, let me know your thoughts on this list in the comments below, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.